Show your age. Show your body. Show your strength. Show your edge. Show your killer hair. Show yourself. Hair biology, designed to work with your hair as you age.
Title this panel, Can You See Us Now? Because the truth is, for women around 50, you start to feel invisible because society stops seeing you. And you start to feel invisible because if they do see you, they're not seeing you the way that you see yourself. And if we are portrayed in advertising, again, it's usually not how we see ourselves. And in fact, Nielsen estimates, I thought this was astounding, although not surprising, less than 5% of advertising dollars are targeted to adults 35 to 64. So that means 95% of the dollars are being directed to people under the age of 35. And most marketers stop even talking to us by the time we reach 49. So I want to start with Erica Fite. Erica, you and Katie Keating, I think she's here today too. Oh, hi, Katie. Glad you're here too. They were both art directors at big advertising agencies, and then you decided to start your own ad agency, focusing on helping brands understand the over 45 plus woman. So first, because I love this story, tell us about your big ad agency experience and how that led you to starting Fancy NYC.
Yeah, it's so fun to be here. Thank you. I was coming here today thinking I haven't been to an in-person anything, like especially a conference in so long. I was having wardrobe malfunctions. Thanks to V&V for helping me out. That's a good sponsor. And hair malfunctions. Thank you, hair biology. Anyhow, made it. And so Katie Keating and I were in advertising at big agencies for about 10,000 years. And we were in advertising and creative directors at a time when only 3% of the creative directors in advertising were women. And in that group, that small 3%, there were hardly any that were in their 40s or 50s. Mostly there were a bunch of young dudes. And the funny thing about, I kind of have a funny story about turning 40 in advertising. This shows you how extreme it was. So I was one day on my way to a shoot, and I was driving along with my friend who was a producer on the shoot, and she, it was my birthday. It was my 40th birthday, and I said to her, it's my birthday, I'm turning 40, and she just practically like crashed the car, and she said, like almost screamed out loud, oh my God, I am never turning 40 in advertising. And I was like, oh, thank you. But I also thought, she's really probably right. I don't know anyone older than that. And so I better not turn 40 either. And I made a decision, and I didn't turn 40. So it was just insanity, pure insanity. And so, plus, if you think about it, there were 3% of the creative was done by women, so 97% was done by men, and over 80% of the household purchases are made by women. So you had a bunch of young men making advertising for women of all ages. So anyhow, Katie and I decided to start Fancy, and we wanted a place where women could really work the way they wanted to work on brands and products they felt super passionate about, and with clients who were brave and wanted to do things that were moving the cultural needle, things that were kind of addressing things that had been hidden, had stigma and shame surrounding them for years, and were really part of our normal life. Things like menopause or sexual pleasure or age, and really have some good, honest conversations with women about that. And Katie and I were in our 40s and 50s at that time, so we had never, ever worked on a brand that spoke to anyone. And we worked over 35, and we worked on female-focused brands, we worked on beauty products, we worked on everything, and nothing. There was no target over 35, so we thought it was time.
Excellent. So let me borrow that back for a second. So kudos to you and Katie, because I know you had a lot of naysayers saying, are you crazy to start an ad agency or talk to help brands over 45? But I want to know, though, what was it that you knew about this market, this over 50 women marketplace, that you knew a lot of brands were missing a major opportunity?
Well, I think Maris said a lot already. I mean, the wealth is extreme, and why would brands want to miss out on that? And the other thing is, it's a really really diverse group. It's very hard to define women in this age group, over 40, 50, you name it. They've got so much going on. You can have a woman that's in her 50s and she might have young children. She might have children in college. She might be a grandmother. She might have no children. She could be at the total peak of her career, just like, here I am, I made it. She could be starting a brand new business, and I think it's true that most businesses are started by women over 50 in the U.S. And she could be taking care of aging parents. She could, at the same time, take care of her own children and be the breadwinner. And she could be in a long relationship. She could be just starting dating. I mean, there's so many things going on. Plus, menopause. So that's just a lot of things that are fodder and target for a lot of brands and a lot of products. I can't think of one category that she wouldn't be purchasing. Exactly. And you combine that with this, bonus. She's got a lot of money, and I think you said it, but Forbes calls this group of women over 50 super consumers, because they have that 15 trillion in wealth, a purchasing power, and they are the wealthiest, wealthiest, healthiest, and most active generation in history.
Right. And all you have to do is look at this audience.
So there you are, you healthy, wealthy, active ladies.
So I have another question for you before we move on to Maris. And so the other part of that is when advertisers do try to reach us, they're usually screwing it up pretty royally. And your agency has done a lot of surveys and research on this demographic. So tell us what women have told you about the advertising they see that supposedly is targeted to them.
Well, I think I'll start with Katie and I, because when we started working at Fancy, we looked around and we're like, woo, there's no one talking to us, and no one's really talking to the way we really feel, our true selves. And is that because we're just in this little advertising bubble? Are we just, is it because we are so aware of it? So we decided we better check, and we asked some people outside the industry, and we did a survey of 500 women over 40, and we found out that we were right. No, there's more of this. We were right, but there were some really interesting findings. And part of it was that these women felt overall that brands were underestimating their purchasing power, underestimating their intelligence, and totally overestimating their obsession with beauty in a way that wasn't real at all. And, beyond just like, okay, the advertising wasn't doing it right. But the worst thing I think we found was that they totally felt like no brands were talking to them. And they were ready to be spoken to. They really felt ignored, invisible, the whole thing that we talk about. I do have to say that there were a few good things. And I think probably the best thing we found out was that over 80% of the women that we spoke to felt sexier, cooler, and younger than they thought they would when they became that age. So that was pretty great. And it just was really obvious that as marketers, we were not talking to them or acknowledging the way they felt, because they were just like feeling like pretty fucking awesome, and we weren't talking to them that way. So, yeah.
Well, thank you. And I really kudos to Fancy because they've done such a great job, and I've been so impressed with them from day one because I spent my first career in advertising too, so I know every single thing that they're talking about because I've lived it too. So now I want to move over to Maris. So while many advertisers have largely ignored us, as we just said, or simply don't understand us, there's a company that's starting to get it now. So Maris who's the senior brand director at P&G, which is the world's largest consumer products goods company, and also one of the most respected marketers in the world as well. Yet I think it's fair to say that up until now, you two had pretty, not you personally, but P&G had pretty much been ignoring this over 50 woman too. And, but now you're actually starting to recognize us, market to us, and create products for us. So tell us what has changed at P&G to make this happen.
Can I borrow that one? Is this one working? I'm pretty loud. Ooh, there we go. I'm not. You're not wrong. So I think you look at P&G's products and you say, hey, Fabric Care did a pretty good job. They sold, everyone. Beauty, not so great. And when we talked about aging historically, we talked about anti-aging. We talked about how do you stay where you are. And to Erica's point, she didn't want to stay where she was. She wanted to grow and to evolve and to be celebrated for where she was now. And we started, I mentioned I also lead Pantene. We talked to a lot of consumers, a lot of women from the ages of 18 to 55 to 65 to 75. We started realizing when we were talking to women over 50 that they weren't seeing themselves in any brand in the category because the category wasn't representing them. So they were finding solutions by trial and error that worked for them, but it was the onus and the burden was on her. And so she just said, this category ignores me, makes me do all this work. And to Erica's point, I think it was this mind opener for us all of a sudden, okay, which you can say, hey, you were a little slow on the uptake, P&G, not wrong. The 50 plus is not a monolith. I think there's this other belief that 50 plus all looks the same.
Right.
And the challenges are the same and they care about the same thing. When in reality, they're arguably more diverse than even you could say Gen Z, which is the most diverse generation in America. And diversity of thought, income, point of view, career, children, not children, career, work, all of the things. And so all of a sudden for us, it was, how do we serve her and serve her more authentically? And yes, advertising was a piece of it. But for us, when we realized what we really had to do, it started with the products. Because at the end of the day, what we care about the most is making sure that we see the challenges that she faces on a day-to-day in terms of getting her hair to represent who she wants to be. Hair is the number one way women express their sense of self and identity. More than skin, more than makeup, more than the clothes we wear, it's our hair. And so we knew it was incredibly important. And if all of a sudden you don't want to go gray, and that's something that's happening, or you want to go gray, or you want to grow your hair long, or you want to cut it short, and you can't do those things anymore, that becomes a really big barrier to expressing your sense of self and identity. And so that was the core for us on why we needed to wake up and figure out how to serve her and serve her with products designed for her, not just here's what you can find in the existing business that will work for you, but ground up, bottom up, fragrance, formula, ingredients, the bottles themselves, they're all font level, greater than 18 points, so you can read it in the shower without
Yes. Do I have the conditioner or the shampoo?
Nothing's worse than pumping out some conditioner when you mean for shampoo. You're like, shit. So that ergonomic pumps, so easy to grip in shower, easy to dispense, really easy to use forms, purple shampoos for silver hair, treatments that really deal with the fact that you're coloring more, and as an outcome, you have no cuticle left. Sorry if you didn't know that, but we've destroyed our hair. And that was really, really exciting. And then what was most exciting was when we talked to 50-plus-year-old women. I remember talking to one And she said, I just turned 50. Can I say a couple bad words?
Yes.
Okay.
Please do.
Okay. You already did. Yes. Well, I was gonna. Yeah, good point. She said, I just had my 50th birthday last week, and we were all like, happy birthday. And she goes, I call it my I don't give a fuck birthday. And we were like, say more. She's like, why would I care? Like, I know exactly who I want to be. I know exactly the type of beauty I want to express, and I'm going to tell everybody about that. And I can't imagine a greater honor or privilege than advertising to somebody like that. So that's what we're focused on, and continuing to grow and expand and serve more women and delight more women.
Well, that's fucking great. Okay, so I don't get to say that word a lot, and it's my favorite word, actually. But so honestly, your advertising is really brilliant on hair biology. I love this. Show your age. It's such a great tag. But what were the insights that you gained in terms of how you were going to position this product?
When we talked with Fancy, and Erica can build too, I mean, so much of what the beauty industry does is, for God's sake, don't tell them how old you are. For God's sake, don't show any sign that you might be over the age of 35, 40, whatever it is. Because once you do, you are relegated in Hollywood to one role, which is like a trope, right? Like the stereotype. Or in life, and you're just ignored. So for God's sake, don't do that. And I think we started to say, well, wait a second. When men get older, they get like more experienced and more distinguished and like more virility and more like, which is actually not freaking true. But, so like, why are we not celebrating the amazing things that are happening to women as they age? All the things we talked about today. So the insight was really like everything else, everything in the category is about slow it, stop it, reverse it, age, don't do it. And while there might be things that we want to slow and stop, or let's not assume that everyone wants to do that. Let's not assume that that's the come from state for every individual. Let's start to celebrate this idea that your age is something that deserves to be shouted and deserves to be celebrated, because what it represents is a lifetime of amazing learnings, a lifetime of amazing experience, a lifetime of trial and error, and a lifetime of saying like, hey, I'm wearing my hair, which is one small part of who I am, but I'm wearing it this way because this is me.
Well, I have one last quick question before we move over to Barbara. But P&G has always been a marketing leader. So do you think that there are going to be some other brands starting to follow you and perhaps creating products for us and actually talking to us the way we are? Or do you just hope to own this whole market?
I would love for hair biology to be a $500 million business and own the whole market. But no, yes, I do think though there will be more. We talked to retailers, Walmart, Target, Sephora, you name them, we talk to them. And there are 3 huge white spaces that the customers are focused on in addition to manufacturers. 1, textured hair and how the changing texture of America's hair. 2, men. And 3, 50-plus women. And every single customer in America is saying to us, what are we doing to delight and serve these 50-plus-year-old women who are so in tune and in touch with the category? So yes. Wow.
Well, hear you for that. So Barbara Shipley is the Chief Brand Officer at AARP. And Barbara and I had a great conversation a few weeks ago in preparation for this panel today. And I confessed to her that in my book, Can You See Us Now? And yes, that's a shameless plug. But one of the characters who is turning 50 is horrified because she just received her unsolicited AARP card in the mail. So I thought I had get that. I thought I had to confess to Barbara before I could invite her on the panel. But she was like, you know what? that is how many people have perceived us. And what you said to me was that AARP does not have an awareness problem, because gosh knows you don't, but you have an understanding problem. So tell us about that.
Absolutely. Well, so I have one idea that I'm going to take back to the office today, which is our new tagline, which is, it's fucking great. So thank you for that. I'll pay you later. And so, yeah, I mean, AARP is an iconic brand. It was started 63 years ago. But it was, in a way, our success is the biggest barrier. It is iconic, and it used to stand for the American Association of Retired Persons. That's how it was born. But it was born at a time, in 1958, when people looked to retire, they wanted to retire, it was a goal, and when they retired, they wanted to club. They wanted to be in a club of other retired people. So in addition to really being a big service organization, a lot of people don't know that AARP is actually a social mission organization. It's not a for-profit. We are an advocacy organization, service, programs. Our founder was a retired teacher, so it's a very interesting story. But if you're not retired and you don't see yourself as a retired senior citizen, and here your friend at 50, I guarantee she did not, and probably nobody in this room does. So we have a brand problem. We also have a lot of brand assets. I get this question a lot. Well, if you're trying to reach people who are 50, why don't you just create another brand like AARP Junior? So or I get why didn't you just change your name? Well, for those of us who are in the business, why in the world? We did look at it, but then we realized, why would we change a name that everybody in the country knows? And then I said, well, where's the $100 million that somebody's going to give me to launch this new thing? So we just have been really focused on recognizing the audience that we serve, being the advocates for the audience that we serve, and stretching the brand, adding more what I call elasticity to the brand, so that it is not about carving out a certain segment of the over 50 audience, but bringing them in and including them. Because I'll be honest with you, I'll give you a data point about this, or a good example. We have AARP the magazine, which is the world's largest circulation magazine, and we're very proud of it. It's a great magazine. If you don't get it, if you get it, read it and share it. But what a lot of people don't know, so here's an inside secret, is that we version the magazine. So we have a 50 to 59 book, we have a 60 to 69 book, and a 70 plus book. And there's some content that changes in it, some of the advertising changes. Most people don't know that, and we don't want them to know that, because when we talked to 70 plus women and told them that, you know what they all said? I want the 50-year-old book. So we version it a little bit differently, but this notion, I'm going to just sort of speak to some of the things that have been raised here. This is not a monolithic group. There are 110 million people over 50 in this country, and the largest growing population sector in this country is people over 85. Yay is right. So yeah, we want to expand what people know us to be, the value, our mission, instead of trying to carve out and carve up both our brand and the audience.
Excellent. So I recently read an article. It was about a professor at Yale who's been studying aging for years. I think she just wrote a book on it, and she's been researching for decades people's perception of age. And she's literally gone around the world and asked the question, how would you describe an older person? In the US, the top answer is memory loss. In China, the answer is wisdom. So one of the areas that AARP is really taken a leadership role in is looking at the stereotypes of aging. So Barbara, talk to us a little bit about how we're portrayed in the media very
So this
often.
is a huge passion area for me. And I go not only just around the country, but I go around the world. Actually, I'll be at Cannes at the Creativity Festival, talking to the creative industry and trying to push the creative industry. Now, we don't have to tell the creative industry. You've spoken about this, Erica. The advertising agency is the self-professed most ageist industry in the world. So we don't have to tell them. They know it. And it is starting to change. We'd like to think that we're a bit of an engine for that, but we couldn't do it alone, just like what you were saying about the 3 tomatoes. You know, the more energy we get around this topic, the more momentum we're all going to get. But a couple of things are happening, and I was interested in your story about the folks that are working on creative. That's one of the reasons. It used to be one of the reasons. One of the things that I'm finding as I go out and I speak and I talk and I listen is those creative directors and the leaders in the ad agencies, guess what's happening? They're turning 50. and it's personal. So they love that we're kind of out there talking about how great you can still be at your job and how much wisdom there is you've accumulated, which is true. I mean, that's one of the things that we celebrate. It is not really, why does it always have to be about your age? Why does every creative brief include in audience what the age grouping is? We just stop that. How about the life stage that you're in? Because if you put 3 55-year-old women standing side by side, I guarantee you they will all have different stories. Yet the advertising industry and the researchers tend to just look at that one data point. And if you know one data point about me, you know almost nothing about me. So this is a real opportunity to look at things around life stage, look at things around aspiration, look at the authentic sides of us than just what it says on our driver's license. Nobody wants that. The other thing that's happening in the ad agency, or the ad world, is millennials will start turning 50 in 8 short years. And so it really is starting to get that kind of personal sense. And even in the industry, it's starting. The brakes are starting to be put on. We've made good progress in helping everybody understand that the over 50 audience has a lot of money. We call it the longevity economy, and we study it. We study also the impacts. So you mentioned that people could be caregiving. So there are also a lot of drains on this economy. So we want to create opportunities for people. The initiative that I run is called Shaping a New Image of Aging. And 3 years ago, we created something I'm really proud of. You can go check it out. You don't have to be in the industry. We partnered with Getty Images, and we launched a signature collection called Disrupt Aging. And it started with 1,700 images that already existed, that were sort of following in the mantra that we wanted. And it's over 8,000 images now. The photographers around the world are getting the memo. The briefs have changed, the models have changed, models loosely. The people that we're featuring and the stories are becoming more real. It's all about reorienting people around the realities of aging. People 65, half of people 65 today are still working. So why are people always shown as kind of doddering fools and, as I always say, wearing beige on the beach? We don't just wear beige, and we don't just jump on our husbands' backs and piggyback down the beach. And by the way, golf is not everyone's favorite pastime. So the whole tools that we create, we can go out there and talk all we want, but until we have the products, until we have the work, and until we actually have the tools upstream to help everybody understand how they can change the work downstream, we're just going to be making incremental change. And I feel like it's been changing. The momentum is definitely picking up.
Well, that's great, Barbara. And I have to say that Getty Image partnership that you have done is really fantastic, and major kudos to AARP for leading the charge. And I think you'll all have such a very different impression today now of the new AARP, which was really being led. You've really led this amazing brand rebranding. So I have just one last thing briefly. If you can talk to us, I know you have a brand new campaign called Universal Truth. So tell us a little bit about that.
So Anne, you said something when we were kicking us off, the notion of, well, you talked about happiness specifically, but we found these interesting insights, and there are tons of insights, as you guys have spoken to, about this audience. There is a challenge in running the AARP brand. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. When you're trying to be relevant to everybody between 50 and 100, and you're trying to be relevant to people who live in an urban setting and a rural setting and all the diversity elements and people who are grandmas and people who are starting businesses, it's a lot. It's a lot to put on the brand. So the insight was that you could, if you're turning 50 today, you could still have half your life ahead of you. Think about that. We just said that the largest growing population is people over 85. So living to be 100 is certainly not a sure thing, but it's getting closer. So you could still have half your life to live. And if you have half your life to live, you want to make sure your money, your health, and your happiness live as long as you do. And that, thank you. And that was this, like, holy cow, aha moment. Nobody would disagree with that. Nobody would say, nah, I don't care if my money lives as long as I do. But it was the happiness message that really turned this around. It was the money and the health. We kind of expect that of you, AARP. But when we brought the happiness message in, it just went right to the heart. It came on the heels of COVID, when we all got a very different sense of what made us happy, let's be honest. We were more in touch with what made us happy. And it's that happiness message that really catapulted the campaign. And we started to see some perception shifts that were amazing. And the last thing that we did was, I want to remind everybody, and because I don't have to tell you, because you live it, older people don't just like hanging with other older people. And so we are very much into the multi-generational world. How you live your life. So the campaign is charming. I think it is. Most other people seem to also. And it's these intergenerational relationships that people have. And sometimes I would get these questions, well, what's the relationship between this man and this young boy? And I was like, who cares? They're friends. Why couldn't they be friends? And so this need that people have, well, is it his father? Could he be old enough to be the father? Is that man over 50? So tired of that. Look at the story. It's about the stories. Stop trying to figure out how old the person is or what the father-son relationship. And these charming stories of people living in multi-generational lives, which is what they do, with their families, at work. And that's one of the other big things we push, is to create these multi-generational teams at agencies. And the work is so much better when we do.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Barbara. So we have a couple minutes left, and I just have one last question for each of you. We'll just sort of do this a lightning round. But the question is, are you seeing progress in changing the perceptions of aging? And what could each one of us in this room do to help change that? And I'll start with you, Erica.
Yeah, sure. I think that Barbara touched on so much of that, because really, as people get older, they understand it and it's important to them. But also just this including them and having diversity, and making sure that there are women of or all kinds of people in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, everywhere. I mean, in the campaigns, at the workplace, and basically anywhere that any sort of decision's being made. And make sure she's visible and she has a voice and all that. And I think that if there's really true diversity of everything, age, gender, race, that people get to know each other. And when they get to know each other and spend time with each other, they start to understand each other, they start to have relationships, and then they will value each other. So it's really inclusion.
Maris, what would you say to that?
I think very consistent and very similar. I think we are making progress. And I think the biggest thing we have to do is, as advertisers and brands and companies, I think it starts with, you can't serve a person if you don't understand the person. So it's about understanding and deep knowledge, not surface level. Not saying I can articulate a stereotype, but I know this person. And that takes work. So you got to be willing to do the work. So I think do the work. And then the other thing I think is, we, as women, we have to do a better job of, at all ages, of celebrating the different milestones, and experience. So the intergenerational piece, I think, is a huge part. I think we can make this a much healthier discourse, dialogue, and celebration if women who are 30 are celebrating women who are 50, and women who are 50 are celebrating women who are 70. We can be our own biggest group of advocates and partners. So that's something we talk a lot about with our community. So that's my 2 cents.
Barbara? And
I would echo all of that, and I would add that the age absolutely has to be a component of diversity. We are a DE&I culture now, where maybe some of us are coming in kicking and screaming, I don't know, but age has to be part of it. And I tell people who are running agencies and running creative teams, if someone came to you with a concept idea that showed an African-American person with a cliche, outdated, dangerous stereotype, you would kick that concept back and you would question your team. And you have to do the same thing when you see age being mocked and you got to kill those old cliches. It is absolutely time for us to accelerate age, just like we did when we show women, when we show people of color. We have to include age, and we have to kick that creative back, and we have to demand better.
Well, thank you. I want to thank all three of you. This has been an amazing conversation. I would just add to that I love the show your age. Keep showing your age, women, because look at all these fabulous women here. And the more of us who are out there showing how to live fabulous lives at every age and every stage of our lives, which has always been our mission at the Three Tomatoes, the more the word will get out there and the more people are going to notice us, and people who are younger aren't going to be afraid of getting older, which they are. So